Welcome back to Your Story Medicine. Today, I am with Roshni Kavate, who is the founder and creative director of Cardamom and Kavate, a wellness platform dedicated to reclaiming nourishing practices rooted in ancestral wisdom for collective liberation. She believes grief is a portal to wholeness. Through rituals and storytelling, we can reconnect to our origins and be our wild selves. She sees the path to being whole as a radical art and political practice. As a palliative care nurse in the United States, Roshni witnessed racialized trauma and its lasting impact on the health and wellness of communities of color. Combining her interest in art, wellness, and advocacy, she has launched Cardamom and Kavate to reimagine what it means to rebirth ourselves, embody our radiance, connect to our ancestral rituals, and live in our pleasure. Hi, Roshni.
Hey June, hello, hello. So glad to be here.
Yes. And just curious, where's it that you're tuning from today?
I'm in Barcelona today. I will share a little bit about how I got here. People are always like, why Barcelona? Sounds so random.
I
But yeah, being,
know.
you said, palliative care nurse in my introduction, meaning I worked with people at end of life, people who were dying, maybe they were days away, weeks away. And over the course of a couple of years, they would just, kind of just pull me aside and, like I wouldn't even ask them for any advice, but they would just like look at me and say, "Let me tell you something. This is not how you live life." And they just kept saying that over and over and over again. And one of my patients said, like, "What are you doing with your life? I know there's something more you want to do." And they didn't know anything about me. Like, they didn't know anything about me, but they would just like grasp onto me and tell me. And I just felt like, ooh, I'm getting all these messages. I need to act. I need to act on these dreams that I'm just like journaling or just stuffing down inside. And one of them was, even though I found this job so satisfying, so fulfilling to my soul, but I needed, to birth my own dreams, to live outside of the US, to heal my body. And so I just took that as a message from them, from angels. And I said, okay, I'm going to go live in Barcelona and heal my body, rest my body, and birth Cardamom and Kavate. So that's how I got here. Long story
I'm
short.
like, traitor, you left us here to die in the United States so you can go and live your life.
No, come with me. Come with me.
I
I'm
love
taking
it.
everyone.
So, if we can actually take away the title of palliative nurse and whatever other titles you hold, uh, how is it that you would describe your medicine?
I would describe myself as a grief artist. And, I really see life as my art practice. Everything I'm thinking about, that I'm sitting with, and it's really an act of creation. I'm just constantly wanting to create, process, and birth. So I really see being a grief artist as my medicine and really working with ancestral grief, our rituals, and all the abundant healing tools that we have that we've been separated from, right? Because of displacement, because of loss of language, loss of culture, all of that. And um, yeah, I just want folks to recognize that, we're sitting with a lot of grief that we haven't recognized. And I think only maybe in the last 2 years are we really waking up to this idea, oh, there's not just, my childhood or intergenerational grief, there's thousands of years of unprocessed grief. And this lifetime, I feel, is this awakening to sit with all of it. And it sounds scary, and and so many of us are going, no, thank you. I maybe next lifetime, but is that what do you think? Do you feel like sometimes it's like too much?
You know, I have yet to have a very close, intimate encounter with death or grief of a loved one. It's always been an elder who has lived their life to the fullest, and I steer very far away from the medical industrial complex, uh, just because it's not my medicine. It's not something that I'm comfortable with. I would rather hold space in other realms. And so me having this conversation with you as somebody who has worked within the system, has seen it from the inside, and is also expanding your medicine, your toolkit to be able to return back to those ancestral ways, I think is just a beautiful opportunity to see the ways that these things don't have to live in binaries, but there are ways that we can weave them together. Because I feel like for many of us who are talking about ancestral healing, it can feel like it's either or versus and, because of the trauma that many of us have experienced inside hospital in the ways that this industry of death and dying works. But how is it that we can even talk about what alternative rituals look like when many of us are separated from our roots, when we have been born in the United States or another Western country where our parents haven't been able to pass down those traditions because so much of our lives were just built around surviving and not looking back. And so whenever I ask my mother stories about how she grew up, a lot of it comes with a surprise. Why do you want to know those things? Nobody really cares. And it's like, well, I do. I care. And it often happens, like these conversations happen after some sort of tragedy or when it's almost too late. So I'm curious about what your ancestral lineage is and how this has influenced your medicine today.
I come from a line of silk story weavers. They're textile artists. And I found this old book written by, I don't know, like some kind of British, um, maybe he worked for the East India Company, or he was some sort of anthropologist. He wrote this book called The Bombay Hindu Tribes. And, such, even the title is so insulting, from a white lens where, this like tribe of, people, all these people, living in this one land, and they basically classified us as, you know, anyone with this last name, this is what they do, and this is what they eat, and this is who they pray to. So it's a system, it's based on the caste system. Again, it's something I don't personally believe in, but it was through this lens that I actually found out who my ancestors were. And there was this one page, and I don't remember what all it involved, but there were words that just stood out to me. And it said, the wind of a sail. It was clay. It was beetle and nut leaves. It was turmeric, salt, water, silk. And I just thought, that's it. Those are the words to guide me. That those are my ancestral, you know, plant cesters. Those are my, um, sort of my ancestral message, that's coming from the other side. That if I can work with turmeric, if I can work with ghee, if I can work with silk, if I can work with beetle nut leaves, there's a story asking to be woven. I don't make textiles, but I feel like my calling is I'm weaving something. And I feel like I'm really weaving wisdom. I'm weaving stories. I'm weaving a new way of being. I'm weaving healing stories instead of, cloth or silk that draped us. So I think that's my ancestral medicine. I'm weaving care and nurturing.
Did you grow up with understanding these traditions of your ancestors? Is it something that was talked about or at least embodied in the household? Or is it something that you had to go back and reclaim? Like, what do your parents even think about this path that you're walking right now?
I just talked to my mom like 20 minutes ago. And I said, I'm having a really hard time. I don't know, I'm doubting my path. And she said, yeah, why don't you just come back, go to work at a hospital, go be a nurse like you went to school, and stop with all this foolishness. They think it's foolish, it's
Hmm.
stupid, it's indulgent. And I don't blame them, because they could never imagine a creative, spiritual life. You had to go work for somebody else, and you receive what you're given. You can't ask for what you need, what you deserve. You can't imagine a world of your own. There is no imagination. The imagination is what is the structure that exists, within basically the white supremacist context, and they will pay you what you're worth. Actually, not even, less than what you're worth, and you should just happily accept that. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And no, I didn't. I mean, I grew up with all of these, but they just served a ritual purpose. We did a lot of rituals, and it was just sort of part of the culture. But I don't think we really sat with grief. I don't think we addressed it. We just sort of marinated in it. That's how I feel. Having some distance now, I realize my mom, my dad, my grandmother, they all just carried this heaviness that was so palpable to me, even as a young child. And I didn't have a word for it. And I realized maybe 10 years ago that, it's not that somebody had died and that's why I was feeling this grief. It's that our dreams had died. My grandmother's dreams
Hmm.
died. My mom's dreams died. Their lives, their beautiful lives that they had imagined had died. I mean, they hadn't even died. They couldn't even dream. They couldn't even dream. And that's a huge grief to sit with. I wonder if your parents felt that too. So many of our parents, they couldn't dream. They just had to, like you said, survive. And
Ugh, why are you
to
asking
sit
me the
with
hard questions? Like, I'm
that.
supposed to be asking you these questions, but I really, really do appreciate you giving me an opportunity to reflect because so so everyone listening should know that this conversation is so timely because I had a very close scare with my mother this past weekend. My mother is the healthiest elder that I know. And for the first time in 75 years of her being on this planet, she went to the emergency room because there was a scare. And she texted me saying, I might not make it this week. I'm supposed to be on a plane right now to Hawaii for a much needed vacation. And she said, don't go. I need you to stay. Please come stay with me. Canceled my flight, showed up right away, and I immediately took her to the hospital where thankfully it was night and day. I arrived here, she could barely breathe, she could barely get up. And I just remember thinking, Mom, you're my mom. You're the one that takes care of all of us. You know, this is not. And then all of the thoughts started racing through my mind of what's going to happen to the house. My dad is around too, but he can't drive at night because he's older as well. So that reality is sinking in. And thank goodness for the nurses. This is why I'm like, I am not anti hospital or doctors. I understand that they are confined in this Western system and that they are not always in control. But it was the first time where I was so close to losing somebody I love so dearly without room or spaciousness to plan and to grieve. But I remember, Roshni, on the drive from my apartment to my mom's house and also packing my stuff, I was sobbing because I was grieving the reality that my mother is the last cord to our ancestral roots. I'm like, there's so many stories I don't know. There's so much I have yet to gather from you. I want to go back to our ancestral homeland. I want to learn more about your childhood and our family. I don't know how to speak the dialect. Who's going to translate for me when I go out there? I don't even know how to tell the driver the direction to get our little village because there's not even names for the roads. And so all of that to say that more than anything, what I was grieving more than the loss of life, but the loss of this connection to my ancestral homeland.
I mean, to you, like the essence of you know, and
Yeah.
that was a lot to feel in that moment of like
Look, I've been
trying to like,
grieving.
yeah,
I've been
to
grieving
hold
all
that, yeah.
weekend because it's just the reality of us being born here or being raised here in another country without having a large family. And that's another thing. It's like that reality that, oh my goodness, because unlike how my mother grew up with seven other siblings, which was normal, right? She didn't have to be the one who was solely responsible for the death of her parents. The whole village rounded up to ensure this transition of an elder. And if you could see the funeral of my grandparents when they passed, it was a grand celebration. There was both grief and joy, and I don't even think people really wore black.
No,
And
it's usually a celebration now.
right?
Flowers, food, smells
Uh-huh.
of incense. Yeah.
Storytelling. And so I that was also, I
Oh,
was
the
spiraling.
drumming. Yeah,
Right?
the
Drumming, the
music.
music, the
Yeah.
dancing. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
the
And so
wailing, right? This full body embodying
yes.
this dripping of emotion,
Yeah.
tears, all of it.
Yeah. And in my mother's village in southern Thailand, they they hire Manora dancers, and the Manora dancers are half bird, half human, and they are seen as the bridge between the ancestral realm and the physical realm. So when they dance, it's as if they are possessed and they are communicating the messages of the ancestors onto us. Before you go to a doctor, you go to the artist, you go to the dancer. And so I'm like, oh my God, we don't have Manora dancers here. I don't
Who are
even
you
know
gonna
that
call
dance.
in
Who am
Long
I going to
Beach?
call?
Yeah,
Yeah. Like, do
yeah,
I take you back to the homeland? Like, what is it that we have
yeah,
left? So I, I guess these are the questions that I feel many of us may be grieving as well, that we may not even know. And so
may
then we
not
just
even
have to
know. Yeah, I
conform
think we
to
don't even
what we
know.
see. Yeah, like the ways that we have weddings here too, and funerals. It's just we're conforming, but it's like, where's the rituals? Where's the joy? Where's the grand celebration, the artists, the um the death doulas.
Yeah, I think when people think about grief, when I think about in the context of the US, it just sort of has this, beigeness to it.
Yeah.
Everything is filled out in a form, everything's signed, pre signed, it's quiet, it's muted. But
Mm.
that is not our culture. That is not our life. That is not how we live. And that is not how we die. And that is not how we grieve. We grieve with song, with music, with smells, with feasts. And I think we're all craving for that, especially
Yeah.
when our bodies, there's only so much you can talk about. I'm a, I've been in therapy for years, but at the same time, I think talking is not the answer to everything. And our ancestral rituals have been these full body, embodied, sensual practices, even when it comes to grief, and especially when it comes to grief, because we grieve with our senses and we heal with our senses. You know, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, the words we speak, the sounds we make, all of it, our stomach, the way like you sit, the squat, the whale, all of that's ancestral healing ritual. And that's how we grieve too.
And we have done such a good job at dissociating from those senses because it's what we've been taught. It's exactly like how when you confided in your mother and she's like, well, just come home, then go back to work, dissociate from your dreams, let that go. I didn't get to live my life. I had to sacrifice my dreams. So why can't you? And
Yeah.
how is it that you can just look at that reaction from a lens of compassion and just say, wow, that is not my story. And we're so quick to want to defend ourselves or to place this barrier between
Mhm.
us and our parents when that conversation comes up, versus seeing that, wow, I see your pain, I see your grief, even though it shows up in the form of rage or resentment.
Mm.
Yeah. So, how is it then that we can reclaim these rituals if we have never been taught these things?
I think that I mean that itself is the biggest question to sit with. Like who, where do you learn how to grieve? You know, who are the ancestors you learn from? Where is your community? And for a lot of us, you know, at least we have our parents, you know, we know the land we come from, right? For a
Yeah.
lot of people, for Black bodies, for Native Indigenous bodies, that's even so far removed. So there's
Yeah.
just so much collective grief, and I think just feeling that in the first place of what
Mm.
all have I lost, what all do I not know,
Yeah.
and maybe then we can start to think about what do I crave, you know, what is my body craving, what is my soul craving, before we sort of go into like treatment healing mode. I think it's really
Mm.
important to just like soak in, feel. Where you know I feel like sometimes it's so uncomfortable to just sit and feel. Like you said, you know, in this moment of like planning, packing, driving, you're taking stock. So I think the first step is just take stock, find your community, and then really get to know your body and your spirit and ask, what are you craving? And I use that word craving very specifically because, again, it's a full body need.
Yeah.
It's your senses are asking for, your taste buds are asking for something. So really, you know, it's start feeding yourself, you know, what your grief is craving. So for a lot of us, it's comfort foods, food from our ancestral homeland. And, you know, comfort food, I feel, has become a dirty word. People say,
Mhm.
oh, like, oh, I need to cleanse after I eat comfort food. Like, no, comfort food is rice. Comfort food is mango. Comfort food is soup. It's stew. It's bone broth. It's everything that's like, you know, succulent and unctuous and nourishing and has the smell and taste of what your grandma or great grandma or an auntie might have made in the village. And it
Mm.
just feels easy and it's nourishing and it's abundant. You know, there isn't this like whole like 30 step plating with tweezers and all of that. It just it like the smell and sight and even just the word are like, oh yes, I can already start feeling the digestive juices flowing. So
Yeah.
I would say start with just feeding yourself.
You mean not hot Cheetos and Netflix as a form of
That too, that
replenishing?
too. Maybe that is the gateway. I
No.
did a whole bag of chips the other day because that's what I needed to do.
Yeah. First thing, I didn't eat while I was waiting for my mom's test results.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, June, you have not eaten in over 24 hours. Get up, go. The hospital cafeteria was closed. And so I went to the nearest, it was a Chinese takeout food spot. The Thai food spot was too far. And I just ordered soup. I ordered wonton soup. And
Yeah.
I just like, for me, soup is an everyday thing. It's like an internal
Yeah.
hug and it
Yeah.
brings me back down.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. And it's been just it triggered me to then look into seeking either a death doula or just learning how to become one, just so that I too can have that knowledge, have that wisdom, because as we're both talking about, it's not something that we have been taught. And I also am reflecting on the most recent funeral I just attended, which was last weekend. It was my partner's aunt. She uh, died of COVID, and when we showed up, they hosted it at a park. It was outdoors, and they already had her ashes in the urn. And as people were coming up to share their stories, their memories of her, every single woman up there was a product of the Cambodian genocide. And they shared, how is it that we survived this war, this genocide in our ancestral homeland? And now this is the thing that takes our beloved away. And so that is what triggered the tears for me, the reality of like, oh my goodness, you have survived bombs, gunshots, and you have survived literally the ethnic cleansing of your own
Cleansing.
people.
Yeah.
And this is and this is what
An
happens,
invisible virus,
an
right?
invisible virus. And I'm sending my love to anybody who has lost someone as a result of COVID, or even just as a result of something that you couldn't even have anticipated. Like, we are here, and this is why I'm like so honored to have Roshni on here, because we got to talk about how is it that instead of waiting before it's too late, that we can start reclaiming some of these rituals now. So let's explore more of that, Roshni. Like, how is this showing up in your work, and how do you see this as a form of activism?
When people, talk about death and dying, they think, oh, it's, sort of end of life, like you're saying. Maybe a loved one is in the ICU, or maybe like someone is sick already. That's when we bring in all these rituals. But I say, you know, we kind of go back. It's about how we're birthing, how you give birth, how you bring in life into this world, how you live every day. What does your daily ritual look like? So I like to think of, ancestral rituals as rituals of daily living. It starts with, just how you wake up. It starts with how you eat. It starts with how you move. And for me, I've been feeling a lot of pain of being displaced from my ancestral homeland. And I grew up with so many plants, flowers, fruit trees. I mean, we never bought fruit. Like, you wouldn't pay for fruit. You climbed mango trees, you climbed papaya trees, you climbed, well, you didn't climb, but you steal, tamarind from tamarind trees. You you basically stole or climbed trees. That's what we ate
Is it
fruit.
really stealing though? Is it really stealing? Because
It's
my
not
mother,
stealing.
I know my mother would tell me that there was no such thing as starvation. There was no such thing as poverty for her growing up, because food was growing everywhere. It's as if
Everywhere.
Mother Nature just wanted to give and give and give. Like, please take, but make sure to also take
Mm.
care of me so that I can continue to give.
Yeah. Yeah, I have memories of like walking around visiting my grandparents' home, and there's just moringa, like drumsticks, just like dripping. There's jackfruit just falling, and it's just like asking for it to be eaten. And I think about that, just like walking around, bathing in those smells. And I was in the countryside this weekend, and I said, let me just stop my bike as I was riding. I'm gonna collect some wild jasmine. I'm gonna collect some loquats. I'm gonna collect some apricots, bring them home, make a little altar. It's that, like little bursts of juicy moments, and we all have access to that. So for me, it's really cooking foods of my ancestors. It's making ghee. It's, making yogurt from scratch. It's eating with my hands. It's oiling my face and hair with oil. It's really getting back to how I was taking care as a baby. And, we think of self care as, oh, everything I have to do to de stress. Like, let's take that out of the equation. That's a very white supremacist model, that in order to survive the brutality of daily life, you need to do certain things to, mitigate that. No. This is the way we live, the ancestral way of being is how you deserve to live. This is how this is how we bloom. This is our wellness. It's just the way we sit, the way we eat, the way we smile, the way we breathe, even. You know, like that's ancestral ritual. And just even breath to me is so powerful. So I like to tell people bring in beauty. Beauty is our activism. That is our biggest secret that we don't know, I think. You know, in our cultures, there's so much beauty, the plants, the fabrics, the smells, the stories, the songs, right? Um, yeah, just start, infusing them into your daily life. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to wait for this main holiday. No, like every morning,
Hmm.
what can you do? The ghee I make, I just put a little dab on my oatmeal or porridge.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
put
so
on my
good.
face at night.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's in little ways that I'm touching my own face, the way my grandmother,
Mm.
would have like
Yeah.
kind of just caressed myself. So I think
Yeah.
tenderness, beauty, that's our activism. It doesn't have to be this sort of protest that we think of,
Mm.
that is important too, but that doesn't have to be the only way we protest. The way we can protest is eat rice with our hands and go to sleep at 10, you know?
Oh my gosh, that
Yeah.
second part though. Yeah, and I could feel so much resistance in people who have been in that hustle and grind. How can I incorporate ritual when I'm working long hours, when I have so much to do? It's like that colonized victim consciousness is so ingrained
Right.
in so many of us, and yet here you are saying, I have sat at the feet of so many people who have told me this is not the way to live life, and
Mm-hmm.
you get to make a different choice. And what I also think is so beautiful and profound is that even though you are in another country that is not even of your ancestral roots, that you can ride your bike through the countryside and you can still see these plants that are reminiscent of your motherland. It's like, how did you get there? How did you get here? And I often think about that whenever
Oh,
I'm walking through Long Beach and I see dragon fruits that are blooming in the front yards of neighbors, or even the cacti, even though that's more indigenous to this land, but so much fruit, herbs, these plants, they have found their way into this other country, into other countries, as if to one day come across you as a reminder from your ancestors saying, hey, we're still here. We got you. Remember.
mm-hmm. Yeah. There's like so much rose I've been seeing all this year. And I haven't seen this much rose last year. I don't know what happened. It's just,
Mm.
like I went to a rose farm. I saw rose every day last week. And I thought, okay, this is a message. This is a message
Mm.
from my grandmother that they're telling me that we're here for you. We see you. Just sit with us. And I collected one rose, a wild rose. I made a flower essence from it that I'm just take a little drop, just a reminder of that energy. I dried some. I'm gonna make it into an oil that I'll you know um, massage my face with. So just little tender
Mm.
rituals. And you
Yeah.
know what? We don't have to pay for any of that. That's so important. We don't have to
Yeah.
consume, right? In a consumerist, capitalistic way. It's using our hands. It's
Mm-hmm.
discovering what's in nature and taking
Mm.
it with respect. And I think that's so beautiful. That it's almost it's so ephemeral that you can't buy that experience. You can't buy ancestral
Mm.
healing,
Oh my
but
gosh. Yeah.
white supremacy will tell you you can in a bottle for 42.99.
Uh, hey, look, if you were the one that was selling it and I knew that it was your hands, that I would gladly pay for
Yeah.
it.
I am making them.
Good.
I will let you know when they're ready. But this idea that, you're not taking it from some other culture. I mean, a lot of wellness
Yes.
products you see, they're not made from their ancestral lineages. They're stolen from lineages that are indigenous, that are native, that are traditional cultures, and they're packaged, whitewashed, and like who's benefiting from that wisdom? So there's a lot of grief for me there too, seeing,
Yeah.
my ancestral wisdom just packaged and morphed and sold. And when I'm trying to make space or create space or claim space, it's like, oh, that's too ethnic. I don't know about that. It's not fitting into our vision or our aesthetics.
Yeah.
So I think we really have to just grow our own plants, work with our own, you know, ancestral plant medicine, and really just bathe ourselves in
Yeah. And while other people are going to Whole Foods to
it.
buy a lot of the herbs that I can find for uh, less than half of what they're charging at the
Yeah.
local Asian market, where I
Mhm.
know that this was born out of grandma's garden and this is her other
Right.
side hustle. Like that brings me joy. I
Yeah.
remember buying this pack of Thai basil, and when I opened it, there was just juicy plump caterpillar that crawled out, and it was
Oh.
so beautiful. And I'm like, oh my god, if I got this from Whole Foods, the FDA would be called, and they would get sued. And here I am, just knowing that, oh, this came from another grandmother's hands.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just also want to say that it's just so beautiful to know that people like you who are doing this reclamation work and building this business as your means of thriving, where you get to weave in these stories and these rituals that we can start to embody in our everyday lives, is such a radical act for me. Like, yes, give me your oil, not give me, like, let me buy your oils, let me learn from you these ways. Better you than somebody else who has gone back to our ancestral homeland and is
Discovered
packaging
it
it, discovered it, and is selling it to
on
other
a
people
year-long
who
spiritual trip.
inspired by
Oh
Eat,
my
Pray,
god.
Love.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, Roshni, what is it that you're currently doing to stay grounded in these times? And what is it that you have learned to release?
What I'm doing every day to ground is really taking in the beauty of my body and my spirit. I grew up just feeling very much not enough. That's a message that I received every day from my parents to the culture. So for me, it's a radical act to say, I love this body that has survived and thrived through the pandemic. I love my lungs. I love my hair. I love my eyes. I love my mouth. I love my appetite, my digestion, right? Things that we wouldn't be like, oh no, like, why would you love your digestion? Like, that is everything, you know?
Yeah.
Like, like, good job, body, for pooping properly, because that is how you stay healthy.
Mm.
So it's like the littlest things that I really, I take comfort in, I'm grateful for, because I'm reminded, if this body and spirit is not healthy, there's nothing, nothing, nothing that matters. And
Mm.
that's what my patients told me. If you're not eating, sleeping, there's nothing you'll accomplish in this lifetime. Just know that, because you'll
Wow.
just be trying to get healthcare. You'll be working from a place of sort of lack. So abundant
Mm.
health, and that starts with abundant love for ourselves.
Mm.
And I guess what I'm releasing is striving. I've been, even as I'm doing this work, I feel like, oh, I should do more. I should, the shoulds creep up a lot. And just being okay with this pace. And we think about, ancestral grief has transmitted over thousands of years. So healing doesn't happen in one lifetime, let
Ooh.
alone 1 year, right? We're being told, oh, pandemic, this is such a great opportunity to, launch your business, lose some weight, tone up, spiritually evolve. It's like, no, I don't want to do any of those. I just want to enjoy this moment in time. even though it's really painful, a lot of days. So yeah, I'm just releasing all the striving.
Yeah. And what a privilege it is for you to be able to learn these lessons from people who are getting ready to make their own transition back into the ancestral realm. And it's like, it's a last minute preparation for many bodies. And yet here we are, never knowing when we are going to take our last breath. But every single day, if we can start practicing, embodying these rituals of loving our vessels when that time comes, I feel like this, like our bodies are a spaceship. It's like, okay, it's done. And at least in my spiritual practice growing up as a Buddhist, my mom has already planned her funeral, by the way, which is so
Oh,
wild. I mean, she hasn't
wow.
shared with me the details of her plans, but that was another thing that was coming up for me, like, oh my God, what is the blueprint of how this is going to look like? Which I think is so radical because it's gotten me to start thinking about how I would like to transition, how I want to be celebrated. How is it that I can start dreaming about that now instead of fearing that time to come, to where, like, growing up, my mom is just so excited about what her next life could potentially look like, even though she would love more than anything to just enter through the gates of nirvana where there is no more suffering. She
Yeah.
already feels like there's still more work that I know I'm going to come back to do. Ooh, which gives me chills.
Yeah.
So, what is a ritual practice or words of wisdom that you can invite us to begin incorporating?
I want to lead people through a pleasure practice because, again, that is our daily ancestral ritual and our activism. So I call it a mango meditation where I lead people through eating a whole mango, no cutlery, no napkins, just mango and you. But today we'll do it with loquats because this is what I foraged this weekend. You
I
too,
I
yay,
got my
fruities.
loquat.
See, LA and or Long Beach and Barcelona, we have the same fruits.
OMG. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just hold the fruit in our hand, and you could do this with any fruit, any of your favorite fruit. Let's close our eyes. Let's feel the shape of the fruit, feel
Hmm.
the weight of the fruit, and start smelling it. Bring your nose to getting intimate, getting tender. And let's take a moment to thank nature, thank the land, thank the soil, the insects, the farmers, everyone who tended to this fruit to be here. Just the wisdom of nature that the fruit evolved over thousands of years. So thank you. What a magical being. And as you open your eyes, just taking in this beautiful fruit as if you're meeting them for the first time, and extending your gratitude to this fruit and asking for permission to receive their wisdom, their nourishment. And when you're ready, just slowly bringing it to your mouth and taking a small bite. I'm just letting the fruit linger. Speaking of my mouth full, I'm just letting the fruit linger in your mouth. So tasting the tartness, the sweetness, the warmth of the juices. Mm. Even as you bite into it, notice what it feels like to bite into it. We'll come back in for another bite. You're just taking the bigger bite now. So really feeling your wildness. you have any juices sort of dripping, you can lick it with your tongue actually. So let me demonstrate. Mm. Yeah.
For our listeners, if you're like me, you don't have any napkins around, so you just got to
No, I
use your
actually don't
body as a
recommend. No,
tool.
you shouldn't be using napkins. This is a napkin
Okay,
free zone. Yeah.
napkin free zone.
Yeah. So the way, if you were eating a mango, the juice would drip all along your forearm and to your elbow, and then you basically go like a big long slurp. So there's a
Oh my
whole
god,
technique. Mango yoga.
I love it.
Yeah. So I'm taking my last bite. Mm. So just taking in that sweetness. The sweetness comes from sometimes years, months, days of this fruit growing, ripening, being picked. So this moment is really a culmination of a long, long time, sometimes decades, and remembering that we can access this pleasure at any time, that nature is abundant, that the fruits are always here for us. Our ancestors are always here for us, just waiting. So, my intention for folks is that you get to tap into your wildness, your sensual body, what you ask, what your grief is craving, and may you feed yourself what your grief is craving.
Mm. It's the first time I've eaten loquat with the skin. I was like, wait, shouldn't I
Oh,
peel it
really? You
first?
peel it?
I know, right? Oh, I can eat the skin. And now I'm thinking about all of the skin that I've just wasted. But thank you. Thank you for this reclamation. Wow. Mm. To take time to really feel. And yeah, my mother planted this. And there is a persimmon tree, two persimmon trees growing in our backyard that my grandfather planted when he immigrated here to raise me alongside my grandmother for the first 3 years of my life before they both got homesick and went back. But whenever I look at that persimmon tree, I know that he is still here. And if you are somebody who does not have that kind of yard where you get to, like, I'm scared of taking care of my parents' backyard. There's so much fruit and herbs, and I'm like, oh my god, my succulents can barely survive. I also know that's because my apartment, we don't have garden space, so it's not something I've been able to practice. But I like, it's the same sensation whenever I am eating food at like a Thai restaurant. I just like, I just think it is so radical that these recipes have been able to exist. They have survived. And one part reclamation is just enjoying your ancestral foods all over again and
Just savoring them.
savoring them and celebrating, honoring that, wow, they are still here. We are still
We.
here.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much, Roshni, for this time. Oh, I also like to ask if you could look back on your life right now as an ancestor, what is it that you would have to say? Mm.
You know, just keep smelling the fragrance of pink. Just don't lose that curiosity. You know, just keep coming back to the beauty of this land. You know, that will heal your heart.
Yeah. And I think she would also say, I'm so proud of you. Thank you. Thank you for giving yourself permission to live your life. Yeah. Thank you for making your ancestors so, so, so proud. And tell us more about where it is people can learn from you and where is it that we can find you.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Cardamom and Kavate or on my website at cardamomeandkavate.com. So you can find resources, upcoming workshops, ways to deepen your path with, you know, discovering your own ancestral rituals and embodying your radiance and living in pleasure. So if all of that sounds good, join me.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes. So Roshni does have a mentorship, a course on where you can learn more of these rituals that you can practice in your everyday life, as well as some amazing other programs that are coming up. That also includes how it is that you can plan for your end of life, or at least learn how to grieve as a pleasure practice, which I think is so important. So I will be the first to sign up, clearly. Thank you so much,
It
Roshni.
involves talking about food and eating. So
I like that form of grief.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, such a pleasure, and I wish you so much love and your mom so much love, and hope she gets better so soon. I want her to cook for you and tell you more stories and travel back to Thailand.
Yeah,
Uh, I
yeah,
hope all
will
of that
happen.
works for you.
Yes, setting that intention that I get to learn the recipes too, so that I can pass it on to my future generation.